everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Vince.
I'm Luke.
And here we are to talk about a topic. Are you ready?
Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Alright, here's the topic. So, Luke here is a stand-up comedian, and I'm just a funny dude, sometimes, if you like cornball humor. And,
we're in red.
And we're both wearing red. Twinkies!
This is a sad episode, please.
They're full of carbs. So, Twinkies, full of carbs. So,
go on.
So here we go. So the idea that we had to talk about was, are jokes that I will call amending jokes funny? Things like your mom jokes, things like that's what she said. And if we come up with some others while we're going along, that's great. One of my favorites is your face. And so I suppose you could call them amending jokes, you could call them non sequitur jokes, and depending on how you use these things.
Yeah.
So, Lucas, do you have any ideas? Would you like to start us off?
Really, I kind of like, first of all, the term you used, amending jokes. It's a really fitting title for those type of non sequitur jokes. It really depends on the situation, the circumstance, where you're at, who you know, how well you know them. Because sometimes they don't work. Because, you know, nowadays it's kind of a cornball thing to be like, oh, you know, that's what she said in The Office. That's what made, like, you know, for example, The Office, starring Steve Carell, so famous because it was so terrible that it was funny.
It's ironically funny.
It's ironically funny because you and I both know you would never say something that ridiculous or corny or offensive in an actual workplace, let alone to women that you really don't know or should be comfortable enough to share that with.
I think a lot of the time it depends on context, and that was your word, you said that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because depending on the situation, depending on what context you have, it could be funny or it couldn't be funny. For example, I think the reason it works in The Office is that, and I'm not even a fan of The Office, I don't much like it, but there are some things in there that are funny. But when they say that's what she said, it puts it into a situation that that's what she said should not be said.
Yes, exactly.
And not to say that she, the proverbial she, would never say that, but rather that's what she said is inappropriate for the company that it's in.
Yes.
And that's supposed to be funny via an awkward kind of humor, you would say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And especially when your boss is saying that to you, that's what makes it weird. Now, your mom jokes, I think, are also in kind of that same vein. Your mom jokes are tasteless, and they're supposed to be tasteless.
I really think if you were to put them on a scale, and I know this is kind of dumb, if you were to put them on a scale, your mom jokes are slightly worse than that's what she said in this time frame we have. Because, again, Steve Carell kind of brought back that's what she said. Before that, that was even worse. You know, that was every bit as bad. I think your mom jokes are still, it would take another Steve Carell to bring back your mom jokes for it to be relatively funny in most settings. Matter of fact, one of the things that made me want to say that's what she said more was on an episode of The Office where Steve Carell is dating his boss, and she absolutely hates herself for being with this man. But at one point, the people who are interviewing the characters on The Office ask her, why is this situation so hard? And she goes, why is this so hard? That's what she said. Oh my God, I'm doing it too. And it was just so funny because you knew how wrong it was in that moment to really be a part of that kind of crass sense of humor.
You know, when you look at things like that, especially because it's not funny that it was said that the innuendo was there. Mm-hmm. It's funny that she's joining in on it, and now she's thinking about it all the time, too. And so...
And she hates herself for it.
Now, with That's What She Said, the problem with That's What She Said is that it's too obvious of a form of humor to use.
Yeah, yeah.
It becomes very apparent that that's what's going to be said. Somebody said, man, you know what, it's really hard for me to get these pants on. Oh, that's what she said.
Yeah.
Or just something. And you end up having to say it in your own head, and you're like, well, that's the obvious thing to say. And because it's obvious, it's not funny, because it's not surprising by any means.
And it's a humoristic form of a cop-out, because it's so easy to get to that it just sounds terrible by normal standards.
But when you use it properly, I mean, when you use it, not to say properly, because properly is still not necessarily funny.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
And things can be clever, but not funny.
Right.
And so I think sometimes dirty humor, sexual humor, becomes less approved of because, or is generally considered not clever, because it's sexual or dirty in some fashion. Would you agree with that?
Well, and also on the same point, you could also make the same point that because we hear it so often, you become desensitized to it, to where in certain situations it's just a harmless, oh, this guy type moment.
Yeah. Had it never been thought of before, it would be clever.
Yes.
But because it's a play on words, it's a turn of phrase, and if nobody had ever thought to say, that's what she said, then it would just light up the whole room. But because everybody says it, or not everybody, but because a lot of people have said it, and over the years it's just an easy thing to think of.
Right.
It's at the forefront of your conversational humor.
I agree.
Now let's talk about your mom jokes for a second.
Please, let's talk about my mom.
Let's talk about your mom.
And this is what we're talking about.
Exactly, because it's not your mom. It's not, yo, mom is so fat.
Yes.
It's jokes about saying, you know what? This thing weighs a ton of bricks. Your mom weighs a ton of bricks.
Yes.
and I like those more, but technically there's no real turn of phrase other than just being insulting.
Yeah, and that's more exclusive in the way of sharing it with people than that's what she said, because that can only be used with people that you know really well. I'm guessing most people use it when they actually know your mother.
You see,
for good or ill. Good or ill.
I think you're segueing here into a good way to talk about it, because here's the deal. Luke and I do as well. Luke knows my mom.
Yeah,
and I know Luke's
my mom.
And we make your mom jokes all the time. Now Luke's mom has been nothing but nice to me. Yeah,
same thing with his mother. Absolutely sweet lady. Just one of the most loving people I've ever met in my life. And so that's what, I know a little piece of me dies every time I think about his mother when I say, yeah, I kind of like your mom. You know?
But because we know it's not true, it's funny to us.
Yes.
And it's funny because it's a situational thing. Now, if you were to take it out of context, it's not that funny.
Yeah.
So
even if one of our own mutual friends were to start saying it, I think depending on the person, one of us might be kind of thrown off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's
a very exclusive, private joke to talk about one's mother.
And you know, my favorite joke to make to my brother is your mom jokes.
Then it turns into that Family Guy moment. My dad's smarter than your dad. We have the same dad, idiot. Yeah, but mine's smarter.
Which, I mean, you can create a dialogue and something funny can arise out of that. And I feel like your mom jokes are kind of an icebreaker. They're not particularly clever.
No.
And, I mean, I suppose you could come up with a situation in which a mom joke would be clever. And that's hard for me to really think about. It's more of a personal thing for me. In a movie, I don't care.
And you know, I know this has to be the same with any type of close friendship. I'm guessing if you were at that point of a close friendship, the mom jokes, that's what she said, whatever private joke you have, has to be brought in by one person or another who has already developed that with another person. Now with the mom thing, that started with me, and I know a lot of people do it. It started with me.
Between the two of us.
Well, before you...
Is what you're saying.
Well...
You brought it into the friendship is what you're saying.
I don't want to sound too possessive of it, but there was a friend of mine growing up who was just... And I saw it, we went to school together. I saw him at our 10-year reunion. One of the funniest, naturally funny people I've ever met, and he was just so fluid. And how he'd be like, you know, it's like, be like, oh yeah, is that test pretty easy? He'd be like, yeah, kind of like your mom. And he was so fluid and succinct with it that it just made it so darn funny.
You know, and sometimes delivery can be...
His delivery on anything he says just kills me. Every time I see him, it's literally back to 6th grade. You know, to be like, oh yeah, you know, like, you know, I got this award for whatever. Oh, no, yeah. And just how he'd look at you with that condescending look, it just made you laugh so hard.
Do I know this person?
I wish you did. He's one of the oldest friends I have. You've got to meet this guy. He's insane.
But yeah, when you look at like your mom jokes and somebody says, like your mom, like it'd never been thought of before, it's not as funny. And that's the thing is that, or it's not funny at all. Like, I don't feel like people who say your mom jokes and they say them in a way that is funny, I don't feel like they say it with any intention of getting an uproarious laugh.
And
I think it's only funny because they sneak it in under the radar.
And if they can sneak it in under the radar, and this is the same with any joke, without really trying to, you know, grab that laugh, then that's when it's kind of funny. If it's said just so, almost quietly, you know, nonchalantly, that's when it's funny. Because my friend started the your mom thing with another person, another mutual friend of ours, and, you know, we all kind of ran around together growing up, but my friend's friend was really the instigator of all the really weird silliness we all had.
It has permeated your life.
It kind of has.
Secondhand jokes. Here
it's like
a
virus. Like it just never left my body. And so.
Well, I mean, you could almost say that's true of culture in general. Is that it moves from one space to another, and even between cultures. You know, one culture imitates another culture. Because, and then they just keep pulling pieces they like, and then eventually, when these cultures become prevalent enough that it has some kind of world presence, they can feed each other.
Yes.
So they just pick and choose what they want.
Oh, I had roommates in college. All three of them came from Saudi Arabia, and there were times we'd be watching, you know, American movies or American television shows, and they would just, you know, some of the stuff, and I'm not diminutizing or however you say it, diminutizing. They don't speak well, so
diminishing.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's somewhere along, but it's funnier to them because it's newer to them. They don't have that kind of just that serious, offbeat type of humor where, like, we're so used to hearing that it becomes a part of our vocabulary and thus, as you said, part of our culture. So when they're introduced to it, they just love it. When they see Family Guy for the first time, or Arrested Development, or some of these other shows that are just, it blows their hair back, and us, we've just been watching it this whole time, we're like, yeah, that's kind of how we talk anyway. We're not as creative, maybe, or, you know, most of us not as funny, but that sarcasm, that dryness, I think a lot of us have in ourselves. It's a part of how. It's part of why my roommates hate America.
He's kidding. So, I just felt viewers go, is he being serious?
No.
So,
Minus American culture.
So that's a great segue into another aspect of why your mom jokes and That's What She Said are funny.
Yeah.
Or can be perceived as funny, let's say it that way, is that they're inappropriate. Now, things being inappropriate, in my opinion, don't necessarily make something funny. And again, I think it all comes back to context. For the viewers who have made fun of me for saying it depends, we had one viewer suggest that we have a drinking contest. Every time Vince says it depends, you have to drink.
Really?
So, I don't support underage drinking. Now,
go on.
Being inappropriate, in my opinion, doesn't make something funny. Just like being able to do an impression or an accent doesn't make something funny.
Right.
Just because you can do a Bill Cosby accent does not mean the thing you're saying is funny.
Well, yeah, and, you know, there are, dare I say, a lot of comedians right here in our city who, just because you have a microphone in front of you and it's open mic night doesn't make you funny.
Yeah.
It's...
That's the thing, is that what was it? Patton Oswalt said something about there's a lot of people that get up on stage and they're going to let the demon monkeys come out of their head or something like that. And they get up on stage and it's just ranting about something. And like, this isn't funny. It's really uncomfortable. I'm getting a slice of this guy's life that I didn't really want. Now, if he had a unique perspective or something, something of an interesting way, a play on words, setting up a situation to juxtapose it versus another, that'd be different. But when when one person just sitting there saying something, it has to have context. Now, a lot of the time, somebody will say just something that's inappropriate. Like Jay and I were recently asked, Captain Logan and I were recently asked about which were some of our favorite comedians. And one of the things that we ended up saying, my brain has totally derailed, I'm not entirely sure. Oh yeah, one of the things we ended up saying was that...
Two.
And cut. One of the things we ended up saying was that I liked Richard Pryor, and Cap said that he liked some Richard Pryor, but often thought that Richard Pryor got by, or people liked his profanity more than his content, which should be the other way around. Now, I like a lot of his content, and I don't mind his profanity, and Cap does. Now, what I'm saying here is that sometimes comedians have great content, and then the audience wants some of that inappropriateness. And then as a career progresses, that inappropriateness becomes the prevalent portion of their comedy.
Yeah.
And now I realize we've jumped from conversational comedy into stand-up comedy, but
no, but that's really good though to kind of go towards that realm, because that's what it's those people who make us laugh in the first place. It's those people who give us those your mom, or that's what she said, whatever. Those are our spokesmen and women.
It's an interesting
what's
idea.
funny, around the workplace, in the garage,
Because a lot of people, and I would say that there are some people that can and some people that can't.
Yes.
And
And you and I have both met our fair share of people who just cannot, and they try so hard. They try embarrassingly hard. I am by no means George Carlin, but I have seen people who just make me cringe when they try to be funny.
Here's the deal: is that sometimes people who are funny conversationally are not funny in stand-up because they are good at working a concept that has been presented and is on the table, but they have no ability to create their own context, or they're too long-winded in creating context.
Or maybe they're just simply, they haven't formed that bridge yet. Because a lot of comedians, I was listening to Louis C.K. the other day, he talked about, like before he had kids, before life really hit him hard and, he wasn't doing very well and his show got canceled, it was, he was doing jokes where, the punchline was, I have a peach, to where now he does amazing jokes where he talks about how he was terrified about getting on a flight. He saw an old lady edge in front of him on the runway and turn around and smile and go, and that was the last real smile in America. And I thought that was the funniest thing, the way he said it.
Absolutely.
I love stuff like that because it's very specific.
I realize we've kind of crossed into something different, but I like this idea.
Right.
So essentially what we have here is creating a context economically. And because you essentially latch on to a shared experience.
Yes.
And so therefore you don't have to really spend so much time creating a context.
Yeah.
But because we've all shared an experience, you can amend that person's experience and have them understand your own situation.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's what Louis C.K. is great at. And so you say that, it reminds me of the moment I had in traffic the other day where this guy tried to merge into me and run me off the road, and then gives me the bird for having, been driving.
You were on the phone when that happened, too.
Yeah, I was on the phone with Luke. That's funny.
And you were smiling as you were talking about how you got back at him.
I
could hear your smile over the phone.
I didn't know what to do. you know, I start to think to myself, how should I react when somebody's being a jerk on the road? And, you know, that's essentially what Louis C.K. is saying. He looks at this person and smiles, he looks at this person and that person smiles at him after being a jerk. Now, what I think is I wish I would have done something different. Essentially, that person gave me the bird after he did something illegal, and I just gave him the bird back.
That's what was really weird, is that you guys came to that point where you were side by side, and you had wronged him.
He thought I'd wronged him, but if you... I didn't want to give him the finger. What I wanted to do was show him a driver's manual, but I didn't have one next to me. I wanted to be like, read this. Yeah. Read this. And, see, that's the thing, though, is that we all have these experiences. And then I start thinking to myself, what I wish I would have done is something that would have made them uncomfortable. And that brings us back full circle. What I wish I would have done is this. So I start thinking about that, and what I say to myself is that's inappropriate. It's funny to me because it'll make that person uncomfortable, but it's also funny to me because I already understand the context of why it would be funny. Because there's these two very rednecky looking guys, please excuse the expression, but there's these two very rednecky looking guys driving along.
Yeah.
And they're obviously trying to intimidate me, and I already have this in my head, but how do I convey that information to somebody else?
Well, and to me, you're still the smarter person in the situation.
You know, maybe that's what it has. Maybe it has something to do with how you present yourself to an audience.
Okay.
Because it's not just context. It's like characterization.
Yes. I don't know if our viewers have heard of this show. It's called the Ricky Gervais Show, where he and Stephen Merchant, who's his writing partner, talked to one of their best friends, Carl Pilkington.
That sounds like a made-up name.
It's
Carl Pilkington.
It's so funny because this Carl Pilkington guy is so far removed from our normal thoughts of society. Even with, you know, English and American viewpoints, this guy is still far beyond that.
Is he the guy from Idiot Abroad?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Same guy. And they're talking to him one time, and this is what made me think about your situation, is they're trying to ask him something simple, I believe, as how plants grow. And he's giving them this very off-kiltered, incorrect view on how plant life grows. And Ricky Gervais stops him and he goes, don't you know how it works, that, you know, like, plants need the sun, they need photosynthesis for them to grow. And Stephen Merchant goes, do you really think you should be using big words around him, you know, like sun? Where obviously the big word is photosynthesis. And
see, that's great, because that's a play on words. I mean, that's not a play on words, but that's a dashing of an expectation.
But it's a really good, it's such a great piece of communication. Not only is it funny, but how intelligent, really funny people are. One of my friends that I went to college with, he was one of the people who told me comedians are the modern day philosophers. And I thought it was kind of a, what?
Or BS artists.
Yes, well, and that's what I kind of thought at first. I go, well, that's kind of a BS thing to say.
Well, I'm talking about, I'm referencing a Mel Brooks movie.
Oh.
I am a stand-up philosopher. Oh, a BS artist.
Yeah.
That
Bachelor of Science. I get it. He's smart. So, I have one of those. But yeah, he was saying how, you know, comedians are the modern day philosophers. And it's funny because I really thought it was BS, and I was afraid that if I bought into it right away, I'd be like, oh, well, I'm playing favoritism. I love comedy so much. Then, of course, I want to see them as the smart people. And I didn't really want to buy it at first. But the more I think about it, the more people like Bill Burr, Zach Galifianakis, Mark Maron, all of these people become more and more prominent in today's culture.
You have a point, because there's a book by Steve Allen. There's a book that I have in this room, but I just don't see it, and I'm not gonna go get it if it's not like right here.
Okay.
But it has a name that essentially I have yet to finish it. A buddy of mine gave it to me for Christmas
several
years ago, and I should have finished it by now. But
you haven't read it.
I haven't read it all yet.
How dare you, sir?
I read part of it, and it was enjoyable for what I read. But that's the thing, though, is that
from Steve Allen.
I think it was Steve Allen.
Huh.
I think so.
You know who that is, right?
Yeah. I just don't know anything. No, I don't know how to impart that upon anybody.
Well, I mean, he was Steve Allen. If it's the right Steve Allen, he was the very first host of the Tonight Show.
Yeah, he was.
Steve Allen, Jack Parr.
He's the famous Steve Allen.
Yeah, there's one.
And so looking at this book, and I wish I could remember the name of it. But essentially, the point is that I think it kind of depends on your career. Now, it depends on what point you are in your career, because there are people like George Carlin who had a very distinct progression. They moved from making jokes to telling stories to making observations and constructing some kind of conceptual context for a culture. And that would be considered, in my opinion, a philosopher. However, people who are very early in their careers, or people who are not particularly adept at poignancy, and don't really have the ability to look into a culture and have some kind of introspection into their own culture, they wouldn't be philosophers. Because I would say that right here we're talking about the difference between the higher form of art and the lower form of art, and both can be equally as valid as being an entertainment piece, but one it would be philosophy, the other would not.
It's amazing, though, to me how, and we're really getting up there in terms of, starting out with your mom and whatever. It's amazing to me how we identify individually what high and low culture is. I know, farmers and lawyers and doctors who probably have never heard of Dave Attell, but
or Dave Chappelle,
or Dave Chappelle, or Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's. But it's amazing. There's a lot of very, very intelligent people, who think, I'm not digging at anybody. He's just not my kind of person. Jerry Seinfeld, or like Bill Cosby. They're timeless. They're very popular. They're clean, and those are. But then you get to people, possibly of the same genre, who love Dave Attell. Louis C.K. Funny thing, when you were talking about George Carlin, there was a group of comedians talking about how they felt Louis C.K. was the next Carlin, and a lot of them were saying, look, we all love Louis, he's a good friend, yada yada, but no, he's not. And one guy made the argument, he goes, I can tell you how he is better than Carlin in one way. Carlin was philosophical on every other issue but himself. Louis knows how to talk about himself and make it relatable to every sad man in the audience. And because it's a man's life who's falling apart in front of you, and he's saying these things for our amusement. But it's all it's like the joke. It's like many of his jokes where he just kind of tap dances, as Jerry Seinfeld once put it, around several landmines and sells really topical, racy jokes without offending anybody. Because you never hear about him getting in trouble.
It's because that's the thing, is he says offensive things, but he knows how to put things so that they become funny, they become relatable, and you could understand his position, as opposed to just, let's say something offensive. Now, that's not to say that he shies away from offensive topics, but that's to say that he knows how to work it. Now, that in itself, I think, is evidence that something is not funny just because it's offensive, but offensive things can be funny contextually.
Yes.
And sometimes, like for example, people will laugh out of nervousness just when something is terrible. And I remember being in a class where it was a playwriting class, and I think the play was called Night Baseball, and it was about racial issues. I was not there that day, but I heard about this secondhand, and one of the students became very uncomfortable and felt like he didn't want to be in the class anymore because people were laughing during this play. And the teacher said it best. He said, I think they're laughing out of nervous laughter. I don't think they're laughing because they actually think it's funny.
Right, right.
And I think the reason, or the point that I'm trying to make here is that laughter is an expression. It's like a release of tension.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's involuntary because it's funny. And sometimes it's, oh my God, I need to get out of here. This is awful.
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes I think comedians can exist on that. And I even think that sometimes people trick themselves into thinking that because the person's a comedian, it's supposed to be funny.
Oh, yeah.
So therefore, it's offensive, it's a comedian, I will laugh at his offensive thing. He looks at me like I'm supposed to laugh, therefore I laugh.
Well, and that's another good point you brought up, because, like, some people will even provide the jokes, not just be the recipient of what, you know, is supposed to be funny or awkward or whatever. For example, I used to work with kids. I've worked with kids in both the school setting and a summer camp setting. And both times I've had many moments, and I've shared these with you, where I'm able, and the kids, you know, they know I'm kind of the funny guy, so they tend to gravitate towards me because I tend to ease things up for them. Because for them, it's a very, you know, and being in middle school, which is the age range I've typically worked with, that's a very hard and complicated part of their life. And they need some sort of ease on the tension of high school's coming up. I'm becoming a growing adult. I'm taking on more responsibilities. I'm expected to do these sports and other activities. And they need that kind of tension, you know, to be released. For example, I remember several mornings in a row where I'd come in, you know, and I have this coffee mug I used to keep at work whenever I had, you know, wanted to fill my coffee. I'd bring it in as the boys are getting ready to go do PE, and it had Gonzo from the Muppets on it. And a lot of the boys would be like, oh, that's a cool mug, where'd you get it? Oh, it's silly, it's Gonzo, he has a funny nose. I haven't slept in 3 days, do you understand me? I'm tired, I'm very tired. Please get out and do your 5 laps. And so...
What I like about that is that it's... The context is that it's a coffee mug.
Yeah, and then I had to really go into my personal life. I didn't need to do that, they're 12. And, like, to me, that's funny. And they think it's funny.
You know, sometimes I think people think, and this is why Dane Cook has a stand-up career, sometimes people think that, like, intensity is humorous. And being intense is funny. Now, if that were the case, everything that's ever been said in a Scorsese film would be hilarious.
Yeah.
So, I don't really care for it being intense. That's not my thing. I need a turn of phrase. I need a certain amount of cleverness in it, or I need a certain amount of personal context.
Yeah.
So,
well, and also to be fair, and I'm guilty of this too.
How dare you?
I know.
Okay.
So, you tend to like really corny puns.
I do.
Like, you have the... like... Can I tell the PNR joke?
PNR?
You're a PNR now.
Oh, PRN.
PRN, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. We went out to lunch before we decided to do this. And he's telling me how he's a PRN, and he's working with older people. And what was the context of it? Because you're like, oh, so I'm working with these older adults, and they're starting to respect me now. I go, well, that's great, because they're finally done PRNing all over you. And so, you know, it's stupid stuff like that that just most certain people may not find funny. But it's, again, I'm bringing this 360, it's like your mom jokes.
You know,
it's, you know...
Sometimes I like the corniness of it. Like, for example, I'll say 2 of them rapid fire here for you. Like, I have this instinct to just say something dumb after somebody says something like, you like cornball humor. Yeah, especially if you fry them and call them hush puppies.
Oh my God.
And so, dumb things like that. And because I say them and... I know they're not funny, but I look over at another person and there's a shared experience there because they've had a hush puppy. Then they think, I can't believe you just said that. But there's a certain amount, like, it's amusing. That
is always my visual response to anything below the 7-year-old level that you enjoy. It's just, because I enjoy it because you enjoy it at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, your mom jokes, specifically, to bring this full circle, because we got to cap this off at some point. Your mom jokes, one of my favorite things to do with mom jokes is when somebody says something really nice about somebody else, or even about an inanimate object. Like, you know what, I think this glass vase is really pretty. Your mom's really pretty.
Yeah.
And, or, you know what, that guy's nice. I like that guy a lot. I like your mom a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll say that stuff, and it's funny to me. I don't expect it to be funny to anybody else, but it's funny to me because it's not insulting. Because the point of your mom joke is you kind of insult the mother.
Yes.
And I like to give a compliment.
She or he is.
Yeah. I like your male mothers out there. And
Exactly.
I love to give the compliments to the mothers because I think that's hilarious because people get... Now, I have to say this. I went to work one day, and there was this girl who said something like, I like that guy a lot, and I said, yeah, I like your mom a lot, and, or I think what she said was, she's really nice, and I said, your mom's really nice, and she said, my mother died when I was 12, and it took me aback for a minute, and then I thought about what I said, and I was like, well, I said your mom's really nice, I mean, and I told her straight to her face. Now, there's going to be people out there that go, that's really insensitive, because
you didn't know. People who say that's they're just being prudes.
Well, I mean,
even if it's a dumb thing to say.
Now, I feel like everybody can share the experience with me where I go, you know what, it's a touchy subject to bring up her mother, I get that. And I didn't know it, I had no idea, and so what I said to her in response to, my mother died when I was 12, was, said she was nice. See,
what do you want me to do?
there lies the joke. Is I'm not saying she's a bad thing. So, and you know what? She and I got along every day after that. And not to say that we didn't get along beforehand, but I said I can't feel bad for making a joke about something I didn't know. And
it almost sounds like you bullied her into liking you after making fun of her mom. Just to
that's fair.
Stop.
And like all I wanted to do was impart upon her the information that I didn't do it to spite her. I did it because
your mom was hot.
Although I will make that.
You read the obits. You know what's up. You did. I don't care what her head looked like after the wreck.
Oh my God.
Did I take it too far?
That was really funny to me. I don't know about anybody else.
Her kappa was detained, but she was still hot.
I do have a friend that I said, "Hey, bud," he's like, "What? Your mom's hot." Your mom's pretty, man.
But I like it even, and again, this is pandering because this is only between us. Is that when the joke bombs, when it really bombs, we immediately both default to, yeah, your mom's your face, I'm going on lunch. Like, you know?
Time to take a break.
Yep.
I ran out of the good ones, it's over.
I'm going to take a dump, see you in 5. You know, like...
And between Luke and I, we say those things because we know they're not funny.
Well, because we're also beyond the fact that it's obviously harmless.
Yeah.
It's not even, it didn't even register us. Even if, God forbid, one of our mothers would die, I still think we would keep it up after a certain period of time passed. Like, say, 3 days.
Well, I was thinking more along the line of 3 years, but fair enough. I would still make your mom jokes, and, but I would almost make them exclusively nice things.
Yeah, well, I think even when you do, because you have a very apologetic sense of humor, kind of like we were talking about the woman at work, you would still feel bad every time you said it.
That's true, and I did feel a little bad when I said that to her, but I really told her I'm not going to feel bad about it. So I lied to her, but I wanted her to know that I didn't want to lose whatever power dynamic there was.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, but I didn't want to, you know, because that's the thing though, is like if you see a little kid hurt themselves and you act like the little kid is hurt, the little kid will think they're hurt.
Yeah, and then they get more worked up than they need to.
But if you act like the little kid's not hurt, then they realize that it's a temporary pain, and now it's over.
Yeah.
So it's it's the same principle of ripping the Band-Aid off quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, do you have any final thoughts on your mom jokes or amending humor, as we called it?
I did want to share this. One of the best, and I'm only sharing this because I love this guy so much. Not only is he a comedic hero, he's also, you know, like, really deep thinker. If you ever listen to interviews, his interviews are better than his stand-up. Louis C.K., which
That's
is something to say. Yeah, which is something to say. I loved hearing him talk about, this is one of his older jokes, he was driving in his car, and he saw a car in front of him where the bumper sticker said, "Tell your mom I said thanks." He goes, "Who's that sticker for? Who's that really for? Are you really trying to offend somebody's, mom?" Like, I would love to see, like, just one guy just steaming behind the wheel, following that guy home all the way to his driving, all the way up to his, parking lot. Just getting out of the car. "Yeah, what does that mean?" "Tell my mom I said thanks." "Thanks for what? You better stay away from us." And the guy's just like, the guy's just trying to unlock his door. I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. And
it's just a bumper sticker, man.
Just a bumper sticker. And the guy's just going insane because he thinks it's about him. He goes,
apparently,
"I want to see that
in a car
argument."
from the 70s.
That's right.
But if you did this, nobody would know what you're talking about. At least the people over 30 know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, 10 and 2.
10 and 2. I usually go more like 11 and about 3:15.
This interview was over 12 minutes ago.
Yeah, there we go. I drive like this. 3:15.
Do you?
Yeah. What's on a clock face? Is there a nose there? I don't know.
I don't know either.
All right. Well, final thoughts for me. I think that it really depends on context.
It does. It really does.
These things can be funny. And a lot of the time they're not funny, and I almost think that the non-funny stuff has permeated culture, and people hear them and they think that the funny thing or the clever thing is that you said it, not what it's being said in response to. So and sometimes they don't understand the context. They don't understand that something's supposed to be ironically funny. So go ahead.
If I may, real quick, it's amazing how in our politically correct culture, how much context weighs on every single situation.
Yeah.
And it kind of sucks because obviously you don't want to offend anyone, obviously you don't want a lawsuit or whatever, but it's amazing to me how people get so worked up if you don't find some way to make them see the context.
Yeah. And that's the thing, though, is you have to do context first, joke next.
Yes.
And
which is tricky for people who, get filed for sexual harassment. But
which is sometimes context doesn't matter. Like
some people are just complete idiots.
And sometimes it doesn't matter how you try to present the context. It's just straight up inappropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you say things, if you say sexual jokes at work, you have to be ready for the consequences.
Oh yeah.
Because
absolutely.
If you say, like, for example, I said this and then I immediately regretted it. I was at work the other day, and I totally regretted it. And there was this guy who, one patient didn't want me to treat her. She wanted somebody else to treat her. And that somebody else happened to be a pretty young guy who has a full head of hair and a nice set of choppers and blah, blah, blah. And he said something. Yeah, how dare that guy? And I said, she just wants a guy that's all handsome and stuff. And this other girl in the room said, you are kind of handsome. And he's like, oh, thank you. And please give me compliments. I said, the thing that I like the most about you is your giant nose and ears. It's just so handsome. And the guy said, yeah, you know what they say about giant nose and ears. Now, he said that. And, I'm not going to fault let's back up. I'm not going to fault the patient for preferring to have a certain therapist. If they like that person, they like that person. But, so his giant nose and ears, he said, you know what they say about that, right? I said, yeah, it's compensation. That's what it is, right? And I said, all I'm saying is there's a reason why I drive a tiny little white car.
Oh my God.
And it got quiet. And I immediately regretted that. And then the next day he said something entirely worse. So
that is an excellent example of how people slip up innocently enough in everyday situations, and that stinks because you can never take it back.
No, come back.
Yes.
As Brian Regan said.
You can never have that moment. That was the last smile in America right there.
Oh, man, I couldn't believe I said that at work. I'm like, well, you guys have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you're like George Costanza in Seinfeld. You gotta leave at a high point.
I thought it was funny. I didn't
Yeah.
expect it to be super amazing funny, and then it occurred to me the risk was greater than the payoff.
Oh yeah.
So, yep, there you go. Anyway,
But yeah, no, trust me, I've had many moments at work where I just want to look at somebody and go, "You're fat and useless too," and I just keep my mouth shut and go on break.
oh, heck, that was funny. Anyway, so what do you guys think? Are your mom jokes funny? Have you heard a good one? Can you supply the context?
Yeah.
What do you think? Is the context easy enough to supply within a short-term period of time? Are they ever funny? Leave your comments in the comments below. Enjoy that. You know, use your fingers and type stuff.
Oh my God!
So,
it's like a monkey. We're in a computer watching you talk.
That's right. We'll catch you next time.